If you're looking for a Linux computer, this video may help. So a couple months ago when I switched to Linux Fedora to be exact, I knew that I wanted to get a new computer eventually. I went through different phases of deciding to build my own computer, which definitely would have led to a lot of frustration, and then I decided to have a computer configured. Now, one thing I did know is that I wanted a Linux first computer. I didn't want Windows and I definitely didn't want Mac. I decided to go down the rabbit hole and discover different companies that focus on Linux first computers. I narrowed it down to about 3 separate companies. One of the most famous, of course, is Framework. The reason I decided not to go with a Framework computer was primarily because it's based in the US. I'm based in France, so I wanted to support companies based in Europe, and I decided to go between Tuxedo Computers and SLIMBOOK. Online, there's not many reviews regarding SLIMBOOK, but I did discover a video from a few years back from the Linux Experiment channel. I found the comparison between Tuxedo and SLIMBOOK quite interesting, but I was having some decisions to make. The first decision was, will I go with a laptop computer or a desktop? And desktop, I was primarily looking at a mini PC configuration. The one thing that kind of drew me in for Tuxedo Computers was their mini AMD PC focused on gaming. Now, I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I do like to game, and generally gaming computers work well also for creatives. We need a lot of memory, a lot of RAM, and a lot of performance when video editing, so generally creative computers and gaming kind of go hand in hand. The more I looked into it, the more I realized I still wanted to stick with my desktop configuration, which is a dual monitor with a laptop setup. If I had gotten a mini PC, I would have had to get a second monitor, and my desk just doesn't have the space for that. So when I started comparing laptops from Tuxedo Computers to SLIMBOOK, I noticed that SLIMBOOK had a computer that definitely caught my eye. If you're looking for a new computer, especially a Linux-focused computer, you need to keep your use case in mind. I'm a creative and I also do some casual gaming, so I definitely wanted something that was capable of doing both. Now, being a creative means we need a lot of ports. We have a lot of different equipment to plug in, and primarily, I need a card reader. I refuse to use dongles, as much as possible, of course. But a card reader is something that is essential. I'm constantly switching from my camera back to my computer to edit, and a card reader is just something that makes it a lot easier. When I was comparing Tuxedo to SLIMBOOK, I found that Tuxedo had a lot more options, of course, but it didn't have the full package that I was looking for. I was looking for a computer that was really creative focused, with gaming maybe being secondary, and of course having the port options as well as having an AMD CPU. Now, why AMD? Well, my whole life I've been using Intel. I was using Intel Macs for a long time, and then last year I switched to using a ThinkPad kind of as a transition computer until I decided really what I wanted to get. Since I've never tried AMD, I decided to give it a shot. I've seen a lot of positives, a lot of negatives, and honestly, I have no regrets going AMD. As far as the dedicated graphics card, I was open to using AMD or NVIDIA. I ended up going with NVIDIA, and I think it's been a good balance with Fedora. So looking at the specific things that I needed, ports, AMD CPU, and I wanted to be able to upgrade my RAM, of course, as well as my internal storage. Now, both of these companies offered that option. And when it came down to it, I really wanted to choose a laptop that spoke to me and really met with my ethos and my design aesthetics as well. I understand that Linux is very user-friendly and you can choose what any distro that you want to appear, but when it comes to hardware, you're kind of stuck with what you get sometimes, and it's not easy to change that. Of course, I needed a matte screen. Both offered this option, But honestly, I found that SLIMBOOK really fit my needs more particularly, especially when it came to the specific options that I was looking for. When you're looking to configure Linux computers, a lot of companies offer almost too many options. And as somebody who has difficulty making decisions, I had made specific decisions and I didn't want to be coerced into different options that I didn't necessarily need, and I kind of wanted to get straight to the point. I wanted a device that was designed for my use case, but offered some options that I wanted to upgrade. For example, the RAM. I needed more RAM, and I also wanted to give the possibility to upgrade that in the future to make my device a little bit more future-proof. This is really important when purchasing a used computer or even configuring a new computer. Look at the possibility for upgradability in the future. A lot of companies make it impossible to upgrade the RAM. They solder it onto the computer itself, and this kind of renders your computer obsolete after an amount of years, or if you decide to change your use case and decide to be a creative or go hardcore into gaming. So that was something that was non-negotiable with any company I was going to choose. It was going to be upgradability and also repairability. Does the company offer warranty, spare parts, and is it easy to fix? I don't want a computer that's difficult, expensive to fix, or impossible to fix. I want elements to be upgraded in the future, and I want my computer to be more sustainable. That is something that is very important to me and also a non-negotiable thing. Tuxedo and SLIMBOOK offer this option, but I found that SLIMBOOK's support page, forums, and warranty were just a little bit more clear. And honestly, I can't complain about the customer support. I sent them many questions while purchasing this particular computer, and they were happy to answer. Again, I'm going to disclose I purchased this device with my own money. They do not know I'm doing a review on it, so this is completely my own opinion on the whole process and how I chose this particular computer. So in the end, I chose the SLIMBOOK 15 Creative model. It is an AMD Ryzen 7 CPU, and honestly, I have no regrets. I decided to go with Fedora distro installed from the get-go. This is the beautiful thing about choosing companies who are Linux first. You can usually choose your distro and have it installed and configured so it's ready to go out of the box. If you're somebody who's a little bit uneasy about installing your own distro, or you just don't know how to configure things how you want it, I highly recommend going with companies that can do this process for you. If you're somebody who wants to do your own distro, your own installation, of course, that's also an option. You can choose dual boot as well. So there is a complete array of different options. And if you're somebody who doesn't want Linux, they also offer the option to install Windows. Another big thing that attracted me to this particular device was its price point. If you're somebody who's a creative or a gamer, you notice that the prices of laptops in particular have gone up exponentially, and honestly, there's not many options to configure it to your specific use case. I went with this particular device because the entry price point was extremely interesting, and also with the added on RAM that I wanted to add, it was very reasonable, especially compared to big tech companies. After I chose my configurations, my distro, I made the order, and it honestly came so fast. Now, of course, all of the components are manufactured in Asia, but the device itself is assembled in Spain, and this makes shipping super fast. They were able to configure my computer, assemble everything that I chose, and I got it within a week. I think 5 business days to be exact, which is quite fast compared to some other companies who are configuring laptops on demand. I posted a short showing my unboxing of the computer. It came very nice, good condition. Honestly, nothing negative to say about the unboxing experience. Now, as far as using the device, turning it on, it was pretty much set up your account and you're on your way. It was super easy. I haven't really had to think about it. There are some additional features that SLIMBOOK has installed that I find quite useful, and I can remove it, of course, and install from fresh if I wanted to, but I found that having that extra support and information has been really key. When I ordered this particular computer, I had Fedora 41 installed, and of course, when the computer was shipped, Fedora 42 decided to drop. So I was able to go through the upgrade process of upgrading to Fedora 42 with a new device, and honestly, I had no issues. The only issues I have are Fedora related issues, and of course with OBS, and that's a whole nother side quest that I could go into in another video. As far as the hardware itself, I really love the aluminum feel. It feels high quality, it feels premium. I did choose my own keyboard language, which again is another great thing about configuring your device, is to choose your specific keyboards. I chose the US keyboard. I am somebody who primarily uses a separate keyboard when using the device. I have a mechanical Bluetooth keyboard that I prefer to use, but this keyboard has excellent feedback. The keys are quite low profile, but they do have a solid feedback when you press in the key. The sound is very quiet, so if you're using this device in a place where you don't want people to hear you typing very loudly, it is super quiet. The switches are just, gives you that nice, quiet, almost Mac sound, but without the butterfly keyboard feeling, and it just feels high quality. I also like the nice touches of the design by having tucks directly onto the keyboard rather than having a Windows symbol or a Mac symbol. It's just really nice touch. As far as the build itself, you can see that the design of the computer is quite minimalist. It is a black matte aluminum build. It is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, I'm not going to lie. So if you're somebody who's sensitive to fingerprints, you might want to put a skin on it, or you will have to clean it quite regularly. But this is with any aluminum matte device that I've had, at least. As far as the screen is concerned, I really love the quality of the screen, the low bezels, and the matte screen, of course. As somebody who's visually impaired, I cannot use anything with a glare, so having a high quality but also matte screen is very important, especially when I'm doing editing or I'm trying to look at my screen for long periods of time. I found that this screen is very easy on the eyes. Now that being said, I usually have this with a dual setup, so I'm primarily using an external monitor, but when I'm on the go, I'm primarily relying on this 15-inch display. Again, I like 15-inch displays because it's not too big like a 16 and not too small like a 12-inch display. Smaller displays are just not an option for me. There's not enough space, there's not enough usability in my workflow, so I generally kind of tend to lean towards a bigger screen size, but with that usually comes weight. Now, I'm going to preface this that my previous computer or workstation was a ThinkPad P52, and this thing was a tank and still is a tank and super heavy. So one of the things I wanted when upgrading to a newer computer was a lighter workstation. And this device I can pick up with one hand, which I definitely cannot do with my ThinkPad P52. So if you're looking for a lighter weight workstation, now there are lighter computers that SLIMBOOK makes, and this is not one of the lightest variants, but it is quite light, especially for a creative laptop. Having all of those ports and having all of those extra features and fans can add weight, but I find that since it's an aluminum build, it's already a lot lighter. And again, the battery is a little bit smaller, of course, than my Lenovo, and this does impact the weight, but in a positive way, I feel. I can easily put it in a bag, I can carry it again with one hand, and that is a huge upgrade for me. Now, as far as battery experience has been concerned, it is a great battery. I get easily 4 to 5 hours if I'm not plugging in. It depends again on my work task. If I'm gaming, if I'm editing, or something like this, I'm always going to keep it plugged in. But if I'm on the go and just doing casual web browsing, I don't need it plugged in all the time, and I try to keep it unplugged to save the battery life. Now, when it comes to performance for editing and gaming, this device blows anything I've used in the past out of the water. I mean, as somebody who comes from using MacBook Pros, using, of course, a ThinkPad workstation, and I've used kind of everything in between as well. What I noticed a lot with most computers that I've used, even with MacBook Pros, is that when you're doing intense tasks such as rendering videos or gaming, the fans kind of sound like a jet plane taking off. No matter how I use my device, the fans will turn on because it needs to keep the CPU and GPU cool, so that means it's doing its job. But this can interfere if you're a content creator and you're trying to capture sound. You don't want the sound of your fans in the background. This could make editing videos a lot more difficult and just unnecessarily messy. So I really enjoy this device for creating content, especially content while you're gaming. I find that the fans, of course, are on, but are quite silent. I haven't had any sound issues with capturing my sound or video with the sound of fans in the background. So I find that the fans work excellent and stay quite quiet. Speaking of temperatures, the device stays amazingly cool. No matter how much I'm putting it through, the device temperature stays very low. I mean, around 57, 60 degrees Celsius for high intensity workflows. I'm pretty impressed. Now, the biggest reason I upgraded, of course, was to improve my workflow and improve my editing and video rendering. This is one of the things that had bothered me with a lot of my previous laptops and especially my MacBook Pro. That's one of the reasons I left my MacBook Pro, which was an Intel Mac to be specific. And I decided to transition to ThinkPad because it had more RAM, it had more memory, and when you're video editing, it takes a lot of resources. But unfortunately, so does Windows by default, and that was one of the reasons I had switched to Linux to kind of give my computer more resources to use for editing. Now, when getting a Linux first computer, you know that your resources and all of the components that you've chosen will go towards your workflow, which makes everything so much smoother and so much easier. In regards to video editing, I have had no issues with lag or skipping while editing on timelines. This could be a big pain in the butt when you're editing and trying to move to specific points and there's a stutter or a skip in the timeline when you're editing. This is usually a RAM issue, and on a lot of computers, you can't change that except by getting a new computer. But if you configure your own computer and you choose one that you can upgrade in the future, this issue kind of negates itself. Another issue I've had was exporting videos in a timely manner. Now, this takes a lot of resources, of course, and choosing a computer that had higher memory, had a better GPU as well, has greatly improved my video editing experience. I can export super fast. Again, my computer is not sounding like a jet plane when it's exporting and rendering videos. I can easily convert files as well, taking a lot less time. Now, if time is not an issue for you, this might not be a big thing, but again, as a content creator, you make a lot of mistakes and you have to re-render things. And if you're doing that quite often and it takes a lot of time, it could eat at your productivity and make you quite frustrated. So if you're a creative and you're looking for a device that fits seamlessly in a workflow and you're used to working in a Linux environment, this device works really great. If you're somebody who is a creative and working in a Windows environment, I think this device would also be a huge step up compared to other devices on the market. I've been using this device for the past month and people have asked me, do I have any negative things to say about it? And honestly, I do not. I'm coming from somebody, again, who is using a ThinkPad P52. So I have a lot of expectations for my computer to just do what it needs to do at the moment I need to use it. And this computer has delivered that on every front. I haven't had any software bugs, any glitches. I have no problems with any of the ports. All of my Bluetooth devices connect without issue. I even use wired mouse, no problem. I haven't had any compatibility issues with any of my devices. And again, the only issue I really have is a Fedora issue with OBS. So that has nothing to do with SLIMBOOK. I would highly recommend SLIMBOOK for those of you looking for a computer that is configured for your use case. You can choose, again, your Linux distro. You can also configure the memory, RAM, and you're also getting a device that is upgradable, repairable, has excellent support, and is from a smaller company. You won't be supporting big tech directly, of course, but you will have those elements that big tech offers in flagship devices and laptops especially. Overall, 10 out of 10 experience so far. I'm going to keep using the device, of course, for the foreseeable future, and I hope to give some more long-term feedback of perhaps switching distros with the device and seeing if that impacts the performance in any way. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it down below, and thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.